Okay, so I want to talk to you about what we call trust in divine power. And the relation that exists between the mind and the body is very intimate. When one is affected, the other sympathizes. Many of the diseases that men and women suffer are a result of mental depression, grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, all tend to break down the life forces and to invite decay and death. So we sometimes get caught in trying to help people physically, and we miss that component of what's going on in their life. The first lady that came to the Silver Hills Guest House was a cancer patient, and then subsequently we had a number of cancer patients that came after that, because we were word of mouth, so she told somebody. And for the first 5 years, we dealt with largely cancer patients. That's what we dealt with, because that's the people that were coming to us. We realized that we weren't really suited for doing that exclusively, for the main reason that some of them needed more help than we could give them. So if their cancer was fairly advanced, and that was usually some of the people that came to us, they would need to have fluid taken off their lungs or their stomach or whatever was like that, and I would have to take them to a hospital because I didn't have the equipment or the know-how to actually do that for them. And so we thought, well, we should rather than setting them up for failure, bringing them to our place to do that. I mean, if they were walking and mobile and things like that, it would be fine. But if they got to the place where they were not doing well, then they needed to be in a place where they had more structure, that they could be able to help them better. One of the things that I had a gentleman that came to us, I had his family were phoning me regularly, and they were wanting me to take their dad, and I kept on putting them off because I didn't feel like we had the capability of handling. He had had 5 years of terminal cancer with prostate cancer. Anyway, I finally relented one day, and he came, and he was on 5% morphine by mouth anytime he wanted, because he was in such pain. And so I said, well, what we do is we recondition people. We get them going again. We get them exercising. We get them working. We get them moving. And there's no way with 5% morphine by mouth we're going to be able to do that with him, because he's just going to become less and less. So in my naivety, I asked him if he could take away the morphine, and he said, sure, okay. So he took it away, so I put it away. I wouldn't say I put it right away, because we had a fellow at our place that was a drug addict at the time, and he was eyeing the morphine, so I dumped the morphine out and put water in there so that he'd get high on water. But anyway, it's just something for him to think about anyway. But anyway, so the next day, the gentleman called me to his room, and he said, I'm dying. And he could be, because he was 5 years terminal cancer. He was dying. And so I said, well, I'll sit with you. And he told me his life experiences and how things were going, and that he was literally dying. And he fell backwards, turned white as a ghost, stopped breathing, and he died, And so, immediately when you're sitting there beside somebody, who do you phone? Who would you phone? Would you phone somebody, or would you just wait for a while? What do you do? Well, a couple of minutes later, he rallied and sat up and started talking to me again. So I was quite relieved. I didn't have to come up with an instant solution. And then he started telling me about his whole family and how things were going in his family. And, he could see this panorama of them in the valley and see them all, the name and where they lived and everything. And he says, I'm dying. He fell backward, white as a ghost, stopped breathing, no breath, just died. And then he rallied again. He died 4 times that afternoon with me by his side. He couldn't make it to the bathroom, so I brought him a pail, and he lived. And I said, it's supper time, and so we went down and had supper. Well, when you remove morphine from somebody, they hallucinate. And he was having a fabulous hallucination at my expense. I was fully prepared for what had to happen. But anyway, so we used to pray together. He spent 4 months with us, and we would pray together. There was a number of us that prayed together, and the three of us in particular. And this man would pray the most flowery prayer you've ever heard in your life. I mean, he would take us up to the heavenly courts, and we'd be before the royal throne with the rainbow over the throne. And I mean, he would just go through this same pattern of, I mean, it was, you were swept off your feet with the prayer, right? But that was it. And the guy that was with me, he had rheumatoid arthritis. I used to call him Creaker, because when he walked, he creaked. You could hear him coming down the hall, creak, 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 creak. He had rheumatoid arthritis for so many years. Anyway, so he would come to me after. He'd say, when is he going to pray about something? When is he going to pray? I said, just let him pray. He's, he'll pray eventually. The fellow told me, he said, the fellow that had the prostate cancer, he said to me that when he and his wife had split up, the cancer had gotten to them. It was more than they could bear as a couple. And when they had split up, they had split the sheets. And when he said split the sheets, he meant that. And what they did is they set up a line on the floor, and on one side of the line was his sheet, and on the other side was her sheet, one dresser, they split the house up piece by piece. They went right through the whole house, his pile, her pile. They got the whole house. And they had lived in that house for many years, so it was quite a pile. And the agreement was that they would split 50-50, everything. Nothing would be forgotten. But he knew that when she got to the Melmac, that was a gift from her mother for their wedding, that she wouldn't split the Melmac. He knew that wasn't going to happen. So he got prepared for it. She had asked him their entire married life for a box of Dusty Rose dishes. That's what she wanted. She wanted that, and she had never been able to get it together to get it for her. But this day, when they were doing the splitting, when they came to the Melmac, he took a cup and he put it in his pile. He says, now you take a cup. And she says, this is where I draw the line. I will not split the Melmac. Well, he knew her well enough. They had that's why they were, splitting stuff up, because they knew each other well enough. And he knew that she wouldn't split the Melmac. And he pushed and he tried. Nope, she's not splitting the Melmac. So he says, well, I have a full box of Dusty Rose dishes right here that I was going to give you if you would have been willing to split the Melmac. But seeing as you're not willing to split the Melmac, I'm going to give it to our niece for her wedding present. That was it. He stuck the knife in, turned it. Well, he told me that story. And I asked him, I said, does that bother you? He says, now it does, yeah. He says, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have stuck the knife in and turned it, right? So I said to him, so what do you think we should do about that? And he said, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I said, I have an idea. Let's order the biggest box of Dusty Rose dishes we can get online and bring them here and invite your wife to come. You give them to her. And he did. He phoned her up and told her he wanted to see her one more time. And she came, and he gave her that. He had it hid beside the bed, and then he brought it out and he gave it to her. And you wouldn't believe the tears and the crying and the hugging that went on in that room. It's just absolutely priceless. I used to take him, after that experience, I used to take him to the doctor, and the doctor told me, he says, this man is riddled with bone cancer. See, what prostate cancer does is it migrates to the bones, and it's very, very painful. And he says he's riddled with bone cancer, and he has no pain. I can't believe it. He walked in here, no pain. And he told me, he says, after he gave that box of Dusty Rose dishes to his wife, he was absolute peace. Absolute peace. The peace was there. He had peace. Many of the diseases from which men and women suffer are the result of mental depression, grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, all tend to break down the life forces and to invite decay and death. You know, our ideas of what causes disease have changed over the years, right? In the 1500s, I've got a picture at home somewhere of a hospital in Paris. And the outstanding feature of it's a room, in a bedroom in the hospital room. And the outstanding feature is in the bed there's two people. Now, when we go to the hospital, we would prefer to have a room to ourselves. We'll even put up a room with two people in it, and sometimes we have to get into a room where there's four people, but we would never want to get in bed with another person. That would be out of the question. We wouldn't want that to happen. But when you think of the 1500s in Paris, a big stone building with no central heating system in the winter, you would literally die in the freezing cold in that hospital. So they put another person in bed with you. That's the way they kept you warm. And if you came with tuberculosis and the other person came with yellow fever, your chances of survival was that much. In fact, when you went to the hospital in the 1500s, when you left home, everybody said their goodbyes. They never expected to see you come out of the hospital alive. That was just the way it was. And in the next picture, they have a picture of the nurse with a sheet on the floor. And in the sheet, there's the dead body of the person who died first, and they're sewing it up. They call it a shroud now. It wasn't a sheet, now it's called a shroud. And we would never do that in our hospital. If there's somebody died in the hospital, they're put on a gurney and out of the room because whatever they had could infect somebody else, right? We didn't know why we were sick. Fact is, they decorated the hospital with figurines all over the place, trying to scare away what was ever making people sick, right? I mean, we have a carryover. It's a yearly illness that we get. What do we call it? Once a year it goes around. The flu, which comes from what word? Influenza, which comes from what word? Influence. We caught the influence, right? We caught the spirit. That's what we're saying. Did you catch the spirit? I caught the spirit, right? I mean, it's really what we call the flu, right? We didn't know. In the 1600s, there was a guy that was making glasses for people to see. He was a Dutch fellow, Van Hoek. He was grinding glasses, and he played with the lenses, and he discovered that he could see things that you can't see with your naked eye. And he did something that nobody in this room would do, but he scraped his teeth. They obviously had glasses, no toothbrushes. And he scraped his teeth, and he put it underneath his microscope, and he saw animals running around. He could see bacteria. They got tails, and they got fins, and they got, they're moving all over the place. They're eating things, and he could see that with his little, and he didn't want to tell his clients that they were animals, because if he told his making glasses for somebody, I got animals in my mouth, well, it may be that they may not come back. So he called them amicals. He actually saw bacteria. Well, in 1840, Robert Koch isolated the anthrax bacteria. And he would take sheep into the College of Physicians and Surgeons and inject them with anthrax, and they drop dead right in his presence. There they go, poof, they're done. And they said, oh, it's sleight of hand. Maybe he's got mercury in there. Maybe he's got some poison in there. There can't be anthrax. We don't even know what anthrax is. What is he talking about? So he would send out, those days they didn't have internet and fax machines. He sent out pamphlets all over Europe, and doctors would come visiting him. And he would have, you wouldn't want to live with him because he had anthrax in his window. He had his anthrax in his house. And he got these doctors who came to see him, and he took some of the anthrax from his window and he injected it in the sheep, and they didn't die. Well, if you're a scientist, you would say, well, it has to die. If it died last time, it's got to die this time, but it didn't. So he took anthrax that he knew had killed sheep before and injected them. They still didn't die. Now he's got a serious problem on his hands. He can't kill these sheep. And he discovered something that changed our world. He discovered that if you take anthrax and put it in a test tube in a window and the sunlight hits it, it kills it. And you inject dead anthrax into a sheep, the sheep doesn't know it's dead. So it makes antibodies because it makes it to the surface, not what's inside, just to the surface. It makes antibodies to that. And so when the real thing came along, it was prepared for it. Bam! It just stopped it. And so he had discovered what a vaccine was, and him and his friend, Louis Pasteur, and you remember Louis Pasteur, he was the one that saved the wine industry in Paris. And the way he did it is when the wine got as whiny as they wanted it, Then you heated it up so that it stopped getting any winier, it didn't turn to vinegar, and then he preserved the wine industry by heating it, and we call that pasteurizing, right? Louis Pasteur, the chemist, Robert Koch, the doctor, they started making vaccines. They did it for rabies, they did it for anthrax, they did it for whatever they could, and we now had the germ theory. In fact, if you got sick, one of the things the doctor would do is he would take your blood, send it to the lab, and find out what's in it, right? What can we culture? Can we make whatever's in it grow, and so we can have more of it, we can actually discover what it is. And so we have now, have you ever seen a hip operation? Anybody ever seen a hip operation when they put the leg over your shoulder? Now they can do it from the front. Absolutely interesting. Our neighbor had it done from the front, went in one day, walked out the next. Fascinating. But anyway, they used to do it the leg over. If you look at the doctor's got double gloves on. He's got a complete headpiece with oxygen coming from outside the room. He's got a complete set of coveralls on, boots on. There isn't one square inch of his skin that's showing anywhere on that person. We have the germ theory. He could have hepatitis C when he walks in there, not knowing it, breathe into the wound and infect the patient. The patient could have hep C or hepatitis, and he could be breathing from the wound and get we believe in germs. We really do. But there was a guy that came along and he said, yeah, but. He said, if you take the blood from people that have the flu, one person's blood is just raging with it and they're hardly sick at all. You take blood from another one and they're sick as a dog and they have hardly any flu in their system, hardly any virus. So what's that about? If you get people in a country where there's turmoil, the whole country's descending into chaos, what country can you think of right now where that's happening? Well, Ukraine, yeah, I was thinking of something in the Caribbean. What's it? Canada. Haiti, thank you. Haiti. If you get a country where the whole country is going into chaos, the people get more susceptible to disease. Did you know that? All kinds of diseases. And he says, what's that all about? So he put animals in cages, and he stressed them. He put too many in one cage. Bright lights, loud noises. Made it so that they couldn't sleep at night. He would give them substances that would make them like this. You see, they were going all over the place. They couldn't sleep. And he watched them. And after a period of time, they started making changes. Some of them had weight loss. Some had hair loss. Some of them, their blood profile, when he took their blood, it was more viscous, sticky, right? So it would plug the arteries type of thing. Heart problems. Every kind of disease you can imagine, just from too many in one cage, bright lights, loud noises, and not being able to sleep. That's all he had to do. And he called it stress. He said his name was Dr. Hans Selye. He was a Canadian. He came from Europe, but he naturalized as a Canadian. We can claim him. He was a Canadian. He was the man that coined the word stress. And he wanted to know if there's something they had in common. So he took a scalpel and took them apart, and there's 4 things that they had in common. All of them. Some of them had weight loss, some had hair loss, some had blood changes, some had digestive problems. They had all different things, but they all had these 4 things. One of them, their thymus shrank. Thymus in the human being sits right here. It's your immune system. You know when you get chicken pox when you're a kid, what happens when you get older? What do you get instead of chicken pox? Shingles. The reason is because this guy he lost the template. He doesn't have the template for chicken pox anymore. As we age, our immune system, our thymus in particular, starts to go down. It keeps record of all those things. But if you put an animal under stress, his thymus shrank. Lymph nodes disappeared. If you're fighting a bacterial infection, what happens is it gets into your lymphatic system, and in the lymph node, there's entrances and one exit, and that exit collapses if there's a bacteria in there. And the plasma cells look at it, and they come up with a way of being able to annul it, get rid of it. And that's taking place in your lymphatic system. You stressed the animal, and they lost lymph glands and lymph vessels, just disappeared, completely gone. How many of you can remember the first time you were stressed? Can't remember? I'll remind you. So you were in class, and your English teacher came up with this brilliant idea to have a basket with all kinds of topics in it. And they would pass it around and say, okay, we want you to give an impromptu speech to your classmates without even looking at you. Just look at the topic. You got to talk about bread making. You got to talk about, playing soccer. You got to stand up for 2 minutes in front of your classmates with no notes and talk for 2 minutes. And we all got stress. And we said, I got butterflies in my elbow, right? Did we say that? You got butterflies where? In our stomach. That's where stress hits you, right here in your gut. Right? Stress hits you right here. And so we got butterflies in our stomach. And the last thing is that he found all of the animals under stress, their adrenals enlarged. Now this is really weird, because I want you to think about it for a minute. The adrenals pump out adrenaline. That's a go, 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 go person. That's a person that doesn't know that two-letter word. What is it? No. Will you do this? Sure. Will you do that? Sure. Will you do this? Sure. Will you do that? Sure. Never say no. Adrenals are enlarged. Eventually, you know what happens to them? They burn out. You got nothing. That's what he says. What the end of stress is, off the precipice. What's the most stressful job there is in the world? In our world today. What's the most, in our country, not world, in our country, besides being the prime minister, what's the most stressful job? Air traffic controllers. Thank you very much. Air traffic controllers. The responsibility of being able to get a plane load of people down out of the air when the plane has not got enough fuel to get to another airport, and the airport that you got to get them down on is covered in ice, has got to be just about the most deadly thing you can imagine. That stress is just killer, right? And so they take air traffic controllers and they compare them weight for weight, age for age, any way you want to compare them. And air traffic controllers have 5 times the incidence of high blood pressure than any comparable group. Compare them anyway. 5 times the high blood pressure. When you get under stress, your blood pressure goes up. Take away the stress, blood pressure goes down. Put a person under stress, blood pressure goes up. Take it away, it goes down. Put them under stress, blood pressure goes up. Keep them under stress, blood pressure stays up, blood pressure stays up, blood pressure stays up. Now take away the stress, new normal, won't come down. We have a word that the medical profession calls it idiopathic. We can't describe it. You know what it is. It's stress. The person's blood pressure comes up. What could you do? Well, I'll tell you one thing for hydrotherapy you can do. You can have the person lay in a neutral tub bath. Come home from work, lay him in a tub that's not hot and it's not cold. It's neutral. There's no temperature to it. It's just neutral. 45 minutes to an hour. Now, I want you to think about a couple things here. First of all, remember what I told you, the person that won't say no to anything, right? They won't ever say no. They're going to be hard to keep them to stay still for an hour anywhere at all, period. So that's going to be a task. But at least if they have the threat of having to take blood pressure lowering medication and know the side effects of it, they might be willing to lay in a neutral tub bath, because the side effects of blood pressure pills, especially for gentlemen, are not that pleasant. So anyway, if you can lay in a neutral tub bath for 45 minutes to an hour every night for 2 weeks. Okay, don't lay in the tub for 2 weeks. Every night for 2 weeks, 1 hour. All right? That may bring the blood pressure down. I've had people tell me it did. It did do it. Brought their blood pressure down. And if you can get that to come down, see what happens is when you lay in the neutral tub bath, your pressure will come down. The problem is that it's been learning to stay up, and if you can make it to learn to stay down. What the beta blocker does, the chemical that they use that they call the beta blocker, you have in your blood an enzyme that's absorbed into the artery wall. And when it's absorbed into the artery wall, the wall will constrict, which puts the blood pressure up. And what they do, they made a mimic of that enzyme, and when the cell absorbs that mimic, it doesn't do anything. So it just leaves it open. And so it doesn't constrict at all. Okay, but neutral tub bath will be also very, very valuable. Okay, so another thing that would really be valuable for that person is well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Okay, so there's a doctor. Oh, I got to show you this one. I'll sit down. You mind if I sit down? Here, I'll sit down. That's it. It makes it easier for me to tell you this story. So this doctor is a cardiologist. And his... he's a thinking doctor. He's not just treating the disease, he's trying to get to the root problem that's involved. So he says he's looking for every solution he can, and he sent his chairs away to be reupholstered. And when they came back from the upholsterer, the upholsterer said, "What kind of patients do you have?" He says, "Well, I'm a cardiologist. They're heart patients." He says, "They're weird." He says, "What do you mean they're weird?" He says, "The only part of the chair that was worn out on any one of your chairs was the leading edge." See where I'm sitting on the chair? I'm not sitting back and relaxing. The only part of the chair that was worn in his whole waiting room was the leading edge. That's something to think about, isn't it? See, these people never went to the doctor. When you have a doctor's appointment, the doctor's appointment is for 9 o'clock. If you're in by 11, you should be happy, right? These people, when they got to the doctor's office, if their appointment was at 9 o'clock, if they weren't in by 5 after 9, they were starting to holler at the lady, the receptionist, "Where's the doctor?" Right? They were sitting on the edge of their chair. They were, they didn't want to sit back and relax. So he says that was one of the things they noticed. Then the other thing he did is every time he had one of his heart patients had a heart event, he would send a questionnaire to all of the family members and coworkers. What was Joe doing just before the event? And what do you think he got back? He was eating more burgers and fries, and he was doing this, and he was, the thing he got back from every one of them was Joe was trying to do more and more things in less and less time. The family would say, "Let's go to the lake." "Well, I can't go to the lake. I got to get something else done." "Well, you know what? Let's go have a barbecue." "No, I can't. I don't have time. I got to get a few notes finished up at work. I got this to do. I got that." Always too busy to relax. He gave it a name. He called it time urgency. Well, how would you know if you had that? What's the best time to go to the bank if you don't want to stand in a lineup? What's the best time? I don't want to waste time standing. I hate standing in lineups. What's the best time of the day to go to the bank? What time? 3:30? Okay, 3:30. Anyone else? I've had people tell me first thing in the morning, right? Anyone else? Okay, so you get to the bank. You're there at 3:30, 6 people ahead of you. What would the person with time urgency do? I can't strangle people, although that would be one option. What would you do? What would they do? Well, they would go to the manager and say, "Look, there's 6 people in this lineup. I don't have," what's the word? Time. I don't have time. Time urgency. Have you ever been in a traffic jam? Never. You guys never. No traffic jam. You ever been in a traffic jam? If you're in a traffic jam, what do? Just sit back and play the radio? You're not going anywhere. You just have to sit, right? No. If you got time urgency, you're the guy that's going down the soft shoulder, taking the first exit, going down straight alleyways, knocking over stray garbage cans, killing stray cats. You got to get. I don't have time to sit here and do nothing. I got to get something done. I got things to do, right? If you're doing the dishes and you have time urgency, the person that does the dishes, and there's people in this room know what I'm talking about, you look at the clock before you start the pile. You estimate the pile, how long it's going to take. You look at the pile of dishes, and you look at the clock, you say, "That's 7 minutes." You start doing the dishes. At 6.5 minutes, the phone rings. What do? You put the phone under your ear, keep going, and get them done in 6.5, 7 minutes. You see what I'm saying? Because that's what it is. Time urgency is you get the job done, whatever it takes to get it done. Nothing's going to stop you, right? He said this. He said, if you have you have a high-fat diet, it increases your risk of heart disease, of a heart attack. It increases your risk. If you have a high-fat diet plus time urgency, you multiply that risk now times 7. Okay? So if you have a high-fat diet and you have time urgency, you multiply the risk that a high-fat diet person has and multiply that times 7. If you have a low-fat diet, having a low-fat diet, there's enough evidence, there's enough proof. CHIP programs and enough studies, and Esselstyn and all the Forkover knives, they've proven that having a low-fat diet reduces your risk. But if you have a low-fat diet, you take that risk and you multiply it times 7 to equal your risk if you've got time urgency. So time urgency increases that risk factor for the person. Now, at our place, we have bears once in a while, you know. Very rarely, because we don't leave out any garbage or anything that they would eat, and bears got to eat a lot, and so, you know, they just don't spend much time around our property. But we do have a dog. Neighbor has a dog that's black and looks like a black bear. And from a distance, when we have nature trails, we walk the guests up through the nature trails. If that black dog appears at the end of one of the nature trails, it has the distinct look of a black bear. And immediately we have, you know, all these guests are like, there's a bear, right? No, it's not, it's a dog. But anyway, supposing we were here this afternoon and somebody went over, heard scratching at the door and opened the door and in walked a great big black bear, what would you do? Run. Good idea. Run. That's it. What's that? Scream. Is there a screamer here? Anybody a screamer? Any screamers? My wife sees a mouse and she does that. Not even a bear, just a mouse. She's screaming and on top of the table. They're like, what's wrong? It's a mouse. Here, let me get him for you. I'll bring him over to you. Terrible, eh? Okay. So we got screamers and we got runners. When you see a bear, your pupils dilate. And the reason for that is so you can have a good look at them. And you want to know teeth, claws, paws, direction, everything about them. Where's his focus? So your eyes, pupils dilate. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. If you take a deep breath, it requires all the intercostal muscles in your rib cage to be able to breathe properly. You're not about to breathe deeply. You're in fight or flight mode. That's the screaming or the fighting. You're in that mode, and so you're breathing very rapidly and very shallow. Your heart rate speeds up. Your heart's just pounding like a trip hammer. Your digestion stops. There's absolutely no reason to digest your meal if you're going to become a meal, right? I mean, it's not going to happen. It's just no point to it. Your immune system changes. If you've got a cold in your nose or flu or whatever is like that, you don't fight it. You're not fighting. They've got a much bigger problem on your hands when you see a bear, right? So that causes you. Now here's one that's really important to understand. The blood goes from your surface of your skin to your core. The blood goes from the surface of your skin to your core. One of the things that you should know is if you're working with somebody and they've got predominantly cold feet, and I'm talking about in the summertime, even when it's warm outside, not talking about walking across the floor in the winter when the floor is pretty near freezing, you would have cold feet. But if their feet are predominantly cold, even when they get into a warm bed, they've got cold feet, it could be that they're under stress. Continual stress, because what's going on here is that the blood goes to the core. It goes from the extremities, it's protecting the core. So the blood goes to the core. Here it is, hanging on to it, right? Digestion stops, heart rate goes up, breathing rate goes rapid, blood goes to the core. Oh, one interesting thing happens. The adrenals start pumping adrenaline. You know where your adrenals are located? Right here. Where's your heart? This is where your adrenals are, right here. Where's your heart? Right here. Perfect. If you wanted something to get fast anywhere, the adrenals are set up so that the minute you start pumping adrenaline, it's all over your body instantly. Isn't that neat? They're right here, and they just pump right into the heart, and it's everywhere, just like that. And you could actually take on a bear. You could cause quite a bit of damage to a bear, believe it or not, especially if his adrenals aren't pumping out adrenaline, because it makes you into one of these superhumans. Just unbelievable power it gives to the person. Okay, so I've had guests tell me, my boss is a bear. What are they saying to you when they say their boss is a bear? When they hear the footsteps of their boss going down the hallway, what's happening to them? Pupils are dilating, heart rate's going up, breathing is becoming shallow and rapid. all of these physical symptoms are taking place that they think of when they think of a bear, because they said, my boss is a bear, right? What would you tell a person to do? I had a lady that came as a guest. She's a professor, a university professor. And to maintain her job as a professor, she has to publish peer-reviewed articles in a journal, scientific journal, twice a year. It's a requirement in her profession that she publishes an article that demonstrates that she's up on her topic, she's studying it, and she's giving it to, turning it in. But she can't have it published without taking it to the dean of the department, and he has to read it over. And he reads it over, and he looks at her. Instead of handing it back politely and saying, you need to do some improvement on that, he throws it on the ground and says it's rubbish and walks away. Now, it takes hours and hours to produce a paper like that. Hours and hours and hours and hours. What would you tell that lady to do? Her boss is a bear. Right? What would you say to do? That's pretty tough, right? So, some people have their own little bear with them. They carry it with them, and that's the person with time urgency. Whenever they start to sit down, they sit down for 2 minutes, say, I got to get something else done. What am I doing? I'm sitting here, what am I doing? I can't waste time watching TV. I can't sit here. I got to do this. There's laundry to fold. I got to mop that floor in the back room. I haven't washed the closet floor for at least 2 hours. It's got to be washed. You know what I mean? Like, you with me? I mean, we carry our own bear, right? Sometimes we have our own. So what would you suggest? Well, let's go back to Dr. Hans Selye, the animals in cages. All right? So he's got these animals in cages, and in some of the cages, he put exercise wheels. That's all he did, exercise wheels. In the cages where he put the exercise wheels, this is what he wrote: no disease manifestations. How much less? 20%? 40%? 80%? 100% of the animals that had exercise wheels in the cages had no disease manifestations. He said, stress mobilizes the body to act, and if we act, it dissipates. If we just sit on the couch, watch a movie, it's still there. Go to bed, it's still there. The stress did not dissipate, and it's just wrecking our internal organs and our circulatory system, doing all the damage right there. He said, he coined the term, exercise neutralizes stress. Exercise neutralizes stress. I can almost guarantee that every one of you in this room, if you're in Canada, especially with the inflation rate that we presently have, mortgage rates going up, interest rates going up, and all the stuff that's going on around us, that you have stress. My question to you is, do you exercise? Do you walk? Do you go walking? Remember when I told you at the very beginning, James White had broken down from stress, and the angel told Ellen White that he had to walk every day. It was winter. And he said, I'm not going walking in the winter. And she said, well, I'm going to go walking. You can walk in my footsteps. He was too proud for that, so he went out ahead of her and walked. Took him time, but he recovered from that. So exercise. Number one thing for stress is to exercise regularly. What they discovered is that if you exercise regularly, especially if you've had, like he did, a breakdown, it takes from 3 to 5 weeks to produce enough neurotransmitters to be able to lift a clinical depression. All right, let me say that to you again. It takes 3 to 5 weeks of regular walking to produce enough chemistry in your brain to lift a clinical depression. It can be lifted, but it takes 3 to 5 weeks of regular exercise. And so it's something. Now the problem with that is, and we've had that's one of the reasons why we have the guest house, is because if you're really truly depressed, many of you won't, or many of the people that you know that are truly depressed won't do 3 to 5 days of regular exercise. One day and they're done. They can't do it again the next day. The problem with stress and not enough brain chemistry is that it takes time to build it up. So they need to be taken by the hand and walked every day for weeks until they actually get the habit and they start getting some of that neurotransmitters to be able to think again. because you can't, when you're under stress enough, your forebrain shuts off. That's exactly what happens when you're looking at the bear, the forebrain shuts off. You're in just fight or flight mode, right? Okay. What else could you do for somebody that has stress? Anything else? Got any ideas? Can't hear you. Hot and cold. Okay, hot and cold. Yeah, well, there's, I don't know if any of you are watching this cold tubs with ice cubes in it. You ever seen the guys that are jumping into that? Yeah, that actually works. It's pretty good. What it does is it increases your neurotransmitters as well. Very sharp, very quick. Got to be strong and robust, but it does do it. Anything else? Anything else you can do? I hear something. Deep breathing. Okay. So, deep breathing. How does that work? Well, you're breathing in. You know, Dr. Thrash, when we were down listening to Dr. Thrash, she taught us to do deep breathing. And the quote that she used that came from, I think it's Ministry of Healing, when you breathe deeply like that, it soothes and tranquilizes the mind. What does it do? It says right there, it soothes and tranquilizes your mind. Deep breathing, okay? So how do you do deep breathing? Well, you breathe in through your nose, hold it for a count of 20, purse your lips, blow it all out, breathe in through your nose, hold it for a count of 20, purse your lips, blow it all out. When I was down visiting Dr. Thrash, she was teaching us, and I was actually sharing a holiday trailer with another fellow. They gave us breakfast and lunch, no supper. So what we would do is we would buy a watermelon. We were in Alabama, so this watermelon's the best thing you can have for supper. It's the best cooking for bachelors I can think of. It requires very little effort. You just buy it and you cut it in half. Now, if you wanted to get half a watermelon, how would you get half a watermelon? If there's two people and you wanted to get your half, how would you get half? Got any idea? Besides fighting the guy, how would you do it? Well, one guy cuts it, the other guy chooses, right? So when he cuts it, he makes sure he hits the middle because you're going to take the big half, right? So that's how we did it. Every night, one guy cut, the other guy choose. We ate half a watermelon every night. What do you think we did all night long? Bang, there goes the door. Bang, there goes the door. Bang, there goes the door. We're up all night long. So here we are sitting in a class with this Dr. Thrash, and it's 80 degrees outside at least, 80% humidity, no air conditioning. And she's talking to us about the importance of deep breathing induces sound, sweet sleep. Let me say that again. Deep breathing induces sound, sweet sleep. We were trying to stay awake. We were just trying not to embarrass her or ourselves by falling asleep in her class because it was so hot and we've been up all night. And I thought the last thing I came down to Alabama to learn was deep breathing. And when I went home, we wanted to start a lifestyle center, and we started a committee. How many of you have ever been on a committee? Anybody sat on a committee or a board? Anybody sat on a board? What do you talk about on boards? Problems, right? Problems. So I went to the board meeting with 5 problems, and I came back with 25. We were working 14 hours a day, and I'm laying in bed, and I can't sleep. I can't sleep. This is the worst possible thing. I'm dog-tired, deadbeat. I cannot sleep. And so one night, I just out of frustration, I got out of bed. I said, I can't sleep. I'll stand up. Maybe I'll get tired enough, and then I'll fall to bed. As soon as I got up, what do you think happened? My wife woke up. What are you doing? I can't sleep. Well, she says, well, get in bed. Well, I tried that. Didn't work. Right? I can't sleep. So I could tell it. She said, well, you going to jump? I said, I'm only on the 2nd story. You know, like if I jump, I might wreck my leg, but I won't kill myself. I have to get on the roof. I have to get a ladder. I'm too tired for that. So I realized she was frustrated, so I got back in bed. The minute I got back in bed, what do you think happened? She went back to sleep. I still can't sleep. Then I remember what Dr. Thrash said. Breathe into your nose, count to 20, purse your lips, blow it all out. Breathe into your nose, count to 20, purse your lips, blow it all out. Do that 30 times. So I said, okay, I'm going to try this. I hadn't tried it up to that point. I'm going to try it. You can try it with me. Well, let's do it. 3 deep breaths. Okay, I'll do the counting. You don't have to do it. Okay, in through your nose. Hold. Purse your lips and blow it all out. In. Hold. Purse your lips and blow it all out. In. Hold. Purse your lips and blow it all out. Okay, just breathe normally. I've given this lecture many times, this series. We have a whole series of lectures in communities. And the next night, I asked the people, how did you make out with the deep breathing? You know what I get? This lady says, I can't count to 20. And the guy beside her turned to her and he said, go back to school. Well, she didn't mean she couldn't count to 20. She meant she couldn't make it to 20, right? She couldn't hold her breath that long. Well, you know when you played hide and seek, you remember how you played hide and seek? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 20? That's good enough. Count to 20. All right? What you're trying to do is slow down your breathing, not stop it. Okay? So just count more rapidly. If you can't do that, then count to 10. But what you want to do is slow down your breathing, right? Okay. So the most important part about the breathing, guess what part it is? What's the most important part of it? The breathing out, not the breathing in. You don't have to worry about the breathing in. If you get the air out, if you get the residual air out of your lungs, your diaphragm will drop and it'll suck right in. You have no muscles in your chest at all, in your lungs. The thing that's controlling your breathing is your diaphragm. The problem with us is getting it to come up. And the way you get it to come up is by breathing out, and that's why you purse your lips, because as you blow through those pursed lips, it pulls the diaphragm up. All right? Okay, now here's my recommendation to you. If you're not doing this, if you have not practiced this, go to your room sometime this evening or today when you're not going to go to sleep. I don't want you to go to sleep. Lay on your bed, put a pillow under your knees, and do 30 deep breaths. In through your nose, count to 20, purse your lips, blow it out. You will be shocked. If you've never done it before, you will be absolutely shocked what happens to your body. You may, for the first time, experience what it means to be well oxygenated. Rest, relaxation. The quote actually says, it soothes and tranquilizing the mind, right? Soothes and tranquilizing the mind. That's what you're really after. It induces sound, sweet sleep. How many of you woke up 3 o'clock in the morning wide awake? You ever had that happen? Of course, we all. Oh boy, this is great. Problem solving. You can solve this, solve that, solve the other. You move money into Grand Cayman Island, take it from there, move it over to, Central America, move it down to Brazil. You can move things around. You can do this and that. Oh, you can solve all your problems right now. And then all of a sudden you go like, I got to get back to sleep. How many here could tell yourself to go to sleep and you'll go to sleep? The more you tell yourself to go to sleep, the wider awake you get, right? You're not going to go back to sleep. You're going to stay awake now. Now, here's a deal you have to make with yourself. If you're problem solving, enjoy it. When you want to go to sleep, start deep breathing. And when you start deep breathing, the counting is important because you cannot move money from different accounts while you're counting. See? That keeps your mind off of that. That's what you have to do. You have to get it off of that. If you decide after 4 or 5 deep breaths that you have finally found your password for some lost account that you haven't been able to have, well, get it done. Then go back to counting. But if you're going to count. It's very important. That's what the counting is all about. It's timing. It's slowing your breathing down, but it's changing your focus, right? All right. So supposing you've done 30 deep breaths and you didn't go to sleep, now what? You're not going anywhere. Just keep deep breathing. Now I want you to try this. If you're the insomniac, can't sleep, you do, after your 30 deep breaths, you keep deep breathing. If you deep breathe from 3 o'clock in the morning till 6, you'll be more rested than if you slept. And once you discover that, you will hope you can wake up so you can deep breathe. Now, I would say that again. If you're not gone to sleep after the 30 deep breaths, just keep deep breathing. Keep counting, keep deep breathing. And if you stay awake until 6 o'clock in the morning, you will be more rested than when you slept. And then you'll wish that you could wake up so you can deep breathe because it's more relaxing than sleep. Now that's amazing. I had a lady next door. She's in her 80s. She had osteoporosis and all the time pain. I taught her to deep breathe. And when she would start deep breathing, you know what would happen? The pain would get worse. And I told her to keep deep breathing. And eventually, the pain would retreat and go right away, and she'd drift off to sleep. And she'd breathe through the pain. Absolutely fabulous. It induces sound, sweet sleep, soothing and tranquilizing the mind. Direct quote, book education. Okay? All right. So here we have this person that's stressed. And we want to get them deep. How many of you have gone on a flight anywhere? Anybody who fly here anywhere? Gone flying? Yeah, okay. When you buy an airline ticket, what's the deal? What's the deal? What deal did you make with the company? You gave them your money, they gave you a ticket. What does the ticket represent? It represents a flight to Maui or Florida or wherever you're going. It represents a deal you made with them, right? You go to the airport, you get on the plane, they close the door, they're backing the plane away. What's the deal? When this plane crashes, the thing that's underneath you is a flotation device. If the cabin pressure drops, this thing will fall out of the air. Don't worry about the person dying beside you. Get your own mask on, breathe. They're backing away from the air. My deal with them, I gave them money, they're going to get me there. That was your deal, wasn't it? Now they're telling you they may not get you there. 400 miles an hour with this little thin thing around my waist, I'm sure that's going to stop me from going right through the other end. You know what I'm saying? It's like amazing. That's stressful. That's a good time when you're going like this, straight up, thinking about it, to do a little deep breathing. Just breathe in, count to 20, purse your lips, blow it all out, breathe in, relax. When those people that are acting on the beach, doing Bard on the beach or acting or whatever, you know what they're doing behind the curtain? Why? Because it relaxes them. You can enjoy the benefit of fresh air. So, okay, we got one thing you can do is walking. Another thing you can do is deep breathing. What else can you do? Here we got a person. They're under stress. Oh boy. Their heart's beating rapidly. They're shallow breathing. What can you do for a person under stress? Oh, what's that? Massage? Okay, good. That's a good idea. All right. On this table, I have what's called a wet sheet pack. All right. I got 2 blankets and a sheet. Not wet. Should be wet. Should be cold and wet. Okay. Now, here's the idea. The person's got stress, and we've had many, many people. I had a lady phone me up from the Vancouver airport, and she told me, I need help. I'm in trouble. I got to go somewhere. I said, come to Silver Hills. After I hung up, I said, what did I say that for? This lady, she's in trouble. She's really... But what we did on her is a wet sheet pack. What a wet sheet pack is, this is a cold, wet sheet, all right? So you put the person, they get a warm bath, whatever they want. Warm up, don't get a sweat, just warm up. Lay them on the sheet, wrap them up in the cold sheet, wrap them up in the blanket. There's 2 blankets here, wrap them up in both blankets and let them lay there. What's going to happen? What happens when you're under stress? Where does the blood go? Goes to your core, right? Blood goes to your core, all right? So the core is congested. You wrap them up in a cold, wet sheet, where's the blood going to go? Got to go to the skin. It has to, because it's cold. You got to have to warm it up. So the blood goes out to the skin. Well, you always put too much there, so you send it back to the core. Well, then you bring it back to the skin, then you send it back to the core, and you bring it to the skin and send it back to the core. This is what's going on. It's a heating compress over the whole body. And what happens is you decongest the core. Stress is gone. We think stress is just here. It's physical. It's in your body. You got to get it out of your body. If you wrap the person up in a cold, okay, not instantly. Let me tell you a couple of stories. We had a lady that came. She had had 3 car accidents in 1 year, 67 years of age. Not her fault. Not one of them were her fault. She thought that in the dust in the back of her car, somebody had written, hit me. Smash into me. That's what she thought. She'd go and walk around her car to see if there was somebody had written it on her car. 3 times she'd been in an accident. None of them were fatal. She came as a guest. So I said to her, well, one of the problems with that is that your neck is stiff because you've jostled around, you've been tossed around inside the car. So your neck gets stiff, right? So I had her laying on the massage table like this, and her husband was sitting here, and I explained to him, when a person's muscles get stiff, you got to massage the insertions. See, the muscles insert into the skull, And where they insert in the skull, that's where it's really hanging on tight. The muscle itself will bunch up, but the actual place where you really want to relax it is right where the muscles are attached to the skull. So you work this part right in here. So he was ready to do it. He was sitting in the chair. He was about ready to touch her, back of her neck. And she said to him, "That's too rough." I said, "Surely he didn't touch you. He didn't touch your head at all yet." She said, "I don't care. It's too rough." Oh, no. Well, that wasn't going to work. So I said, "Well, you know what? I think she should have a wet sheet pack." So I left the room. Lady came in, wrapped her up in a cold, wet sheet. She came out of the treatment room, and you looked at her face, and it was some different, but not yet. Next day, another wet sheet pack. Yeah, pretty good, but not yet. The third day, she walked out of the room. I didn't say anything. She said it. She said, "I'm phoning my massage therapist. She's got to come down here and learn how to do this. This is working for me." I tell people, you can do it for yourself. See, you put this sheet, a single sheet, you get it as cold as you can, wring it out, throw it into a bucket, go take a warm bath, and take a robe, take a warm bath. Don't sweat. Get warm, but don't sweat. Don't get that hot. Just get warm, dry off, put the robe on, walk back over here. You've got 2 blankets on the bed. You can have plastic under it if you want to protect the bed. You got plastic, 2 blankets. You take the wet sheet, spread it out, then you do one of these. See if I can do it for you. So you sit up here like this on the sheet. You're not wearing all your clothes like I am, but anyway, there you go. And you wrap yourself up. Oh boy, there we go. Okay, like this. You sit on it. All right? Okay, just a second. All right, there you go. All right, and you wrap it like that, up to your hips. Then you take the blanket, this one at a time. First this one, like this. You wrap yourself up to the hips again. There you go, like that. Next one, like this. There you go. Oh, yeah. I don't want to even get up. You guys go for supper. I'll be here. Okay, here we go. Okay, like that. See? Oh, this one. There we go. All right. Then you lay back, and you just do the same thing. You keep on doing it with the sheet, like this. You go right up here. You can do under one arm if you want. You can leave your arms out. Doesn't matter. Just like this, same thing, and then the blankets. Ah, boy. Somebody wake me up in the morning. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to fiddle. There we go. There we go. I could get it there. And the other one the same. And the other one the same. There you go. 45 minutes to an hour. I think supper will be over. Anyway. Okay, like that. Now, if you're doing it for people, family, neighbors, people that need it, people that are stressed, if the person is elderly and a weak circulation, check with them within 10 minutes and make sure that they are warming up. They should, unless they're really, really elderly and poor circulation. In that case, if they're not warming up right away, usually all we have to do is rub the person on the outside of the pack, just rub it, and that'll warm them up, right? So then once they start to warm up, then it'll go through the whole process themselves, right? This is the best, simplest and best way to take stress out of the body. I can guarantee you there's nothing that is more powerful. We advertise it on our guest house website as the detox wrap. There's no surprise that we didn't write down the cold, wet sheet wrap, because how many people would sign up for that? I can't wait to go to a spa and have a cold, wet sheet wrap. But detox wrap, well, that sounds good. I'll try that. But you know something? If you do this, you can do this for yourself. Here's what I suggest you do. You try it. You look at your face, you do it, and look at your face again after it's done. If you do it 3 days in a row, you won't believe. You'll look like you're 10 years younger. It just changes your countenance like you won't believe. It just changes your countenance. And that's everyone. I mean, everybody we've worked with. Okay. So I had a lady that came to us, and she had not slept for 2 years. And she was in real stress. You could tell because when you said something funny, she would laugh, and then she'd cry. Then she'd laugh, and then she'd cry. Her emotions, she couldn't control them. They were just out of control. So she'd laugh and cry and laugh and cry and laugh and cry. So I said, well, I know now, after being this many years at the guest house, she needs a wet sheet wrap. That's what she needs. In those days, we didn't have the massage rooms downstairs. We only had the bedrooms. So I had a lady wrap her up in the bedroom. I was out in the hall just to make sure everything was fine. And when she hit the cold, wet sheet, she let out a scream that you could hear in Lumbee. And that's 26 kilometers away. I mean, it was the loudest, blood-curdling scream I ever heard in my life. I rushed to the windows. I thought the guests have all packed up and left. I mean, maybe they didn't even pack. They just left. I mean, that was just your heart-stopping scream. It's just like, oh. So the next day I said, please do not scream. I mean, you need a wet sheet pack, but please, oh, she said it felt so good. I said, I don't care how it felt. Please do not scream. I'm out in the hall, and then when she hit the cold, wet sheet, she screamed louder and longer than the time before. Boy, oh boy, it was hard on the heart. So I said, you know what? I couldn't do that another time. We had downstairs, we had 2 tubs, big tubs, that you could lay right down and submerge the whole person's body in there. One we filled with hot water, the other one we filled with cold water. And we put her in the hot water for 5 minutes, the cold water for 30 seconds, full body, hot water for 5 minutes. What are we trying to do? What's the objective? I mean, if you understand hydrotherapy, what are you after? What are you trying to accomplish with that person? You're trying to change the circulation. It's jammed. It's stuck. That's what happens when you get under stress long enough. You have predominantly cold feet because the circulation is stuck. It's stuck to the core and you can't get it out. It's just staying there. So you get the person in hot, the cold. She did 3 times. She went upstairs and she slept for 7 hours. When she came down the stairs in the morning, not one lady in the house knew who she was. They thought a new guest had come. Transformation, absolute transformation. Never had to pour the tubs ever again. She did it all by herself. You could have done it with walking, right? You could have, because walking increases circulation. You could have done it. She was in a desperate situation. She needed more than walking over the long haul would do it. She needed something right away. The wet sheet back is preferable unless the person screams so loud the neighbors come running. But I mean, absolutely, this is the preference. This really works. If you know somebody, anybody that you know that's under stress, really help them. Start them with a wet sheet pack. And you'll just be amazed at how well it will work for them, or you. It works very, very well, okay? All right, so there's some stresses that don't go away by any of these means. Instead, we should look for the best way to work it out. Talking over our problems freely with a sympathetic friend advisor helps to clear the air. Let me explain this to you now. Talking over your problems fully and freely with a sympathetic friend, right? We need friends. We need people to talk to. We have a new name for it. We call it support groups. When we were kids, we called them friends, right? They were just people that were our friends. We called them up. Sometimes you wake up in the morning. We have a fabulous imagination. We wake up in the morning, we got a bump on our finger, right? I haven't had a bump on I don't know where this is. I got a bump on my finger. Oh, look at it. It's growing. It's bigger than when I woke up. It's already bigger. So I phone up my friend. How you doing? Oh, yeah. How's the kids? Oh, yeah. How's this? How's the job? Blah, blah, blah. Have you ever had a bump on your finger? Oh, yeah, I had a bump. How long? Oh, yeah, you had it for a week? Oh, good. Thanks. Bye. You don't even tell them you have one. You just know that they had one and theirs went away. Yours is going away too. Thanks a lot. We have a fabulous memory. A fabulous imagination. We need other people. We need churches. We need fellowship. We need communication. We need that. It's valuable. It's essential for us, right? And so my mom told me when she was in England as a girl, she went to church 7 days a week. Well, she only went to church once a week. But they were downstairs in the church, and they were doing crafts, and they were doing this, and they were doing that, and they were doing the other. They were Girl Guides, and they were making stuff, sewing or whatever. They had a community. You see what I'm saying? They had a community. We need communities. It's healthy to have communities, all right? It's very valuable. Last story. It's really unhealthy to keep emotional tension bottled up. Okay? It's really unhealthy. When we were trying to build Silver Hills Guest House, we thought, well, you know what we need money. We're 17 miles away from the nearest stop sign, so it's pretty hard to get money out there. But a neighbor asked me to build him a woodshed and a garage, and I built it for him, and we painted it up, and it looked nice, and he liked it, and he wanted a hobby barn, and we built him a hobby barn with a white trim on it, and everything looked beautiful. And his son came along, and he said he wanted a house. He wanted us to build him a house. Wow, whoa, dollar signs, right? We can make money. We can build a guest house. That's what we need. It was 1973, and he gave us the plans, and we sat down and we wrote down every screw, nail, paint, cabinet, brick, block, plumbing. He wrote a really an extensive list, presented to him. He liked it. He signed it. We signed it. The problem was 1974, when the house was to be built, we had galloping inflation. We don't have inflation right now at anything like it was then. 1973 to 1974, the price inflated 33.5% overnight. We had quoted one quote, and that was it. We'd signed it. We said we would build it for that, but everything that we had to purchase for that house was 33% higher. So that's okay. We had to work for free. We were working for free at home. Now we just work down the road for free. It's okay. The only thing is that the man had a bad temper. He walked around the house all the time doing this, right? Everybody I hired quit. They wouldn't work for him. I said, there's absolutely no way I'll work for that man. Well, I worked for him for a year and a half. It's not wise. It's definitely unhealthy to keep emotional tension bottled up. Okay? I kept it bottled up for a year and a half. A year and a half later, I had no memory. I didn't care if I lived. I couldn't eat. I didn't care if I slept. I was a complete wreck, total wreck. I didn't think that would happen, but that's what happens when you get under stress and stay under it long enough, you become a wreck. Okay, so the problem with no memory is you can't read, because you have to retain the thought of this paragraph to read the next one, and I couldn't do it. Every paragraph, right? Well, every sentence was a new sentence, so I couldn't even string sentences together. Literally couldn't do it. I love to pray for my family, and I would pray for my wife, and then I'd pray for my kids, and then I'd pray for my wife, and pray for my kids, and then I'd pray for I'm sure I prayed for my wife. I must have prayed for my kid. I don't know. So I took a piece of paper, and I wrote down each person's name, so I could take my finger and go down like this and remember that I prayed for that person. I would be done, right? I'm sitting there one morning, and I'm looking across the room, and I looked at my work boots, and I said, I'm going to have to get back to work. I haven't worked for a while. I'm going to have to get back to work. Those work boots are too tight. I'm going to have to buy another pair of work boots. So I told my wife, I got to get another pair of work boots, and we were on our way to town. This is 3 weeks later. And we walked into our mall, and I said to her, I'm going to go down to the Goodwill. I always buy my work boots at Goodwill. They're cheaper. I can afford them. I'm going to go to Goodwill and buy a pair of work boots. And she said, why don't you go to Workwear World? Well, I'll tell you why. I hate to tell you this, but we don't have that kind of money, number one. And they never put them on sale, number two. And I can get a pair of work boots for $20 at the Goodwill that'll do just as well for the kind of work I'm doing. But even though I knew it wasn't a good idea, when she suggested it, if I carry out her suggestions, it goes so much better between us. I don't know why. Just carry it out. Just do it. Even makes no sense at all. Just do it anyway. So I went down to Workwear World. There they were, Kaufman's, double leather, triple stitch, work boots, $79.95. Now I could go back and report to her. We're not paying $80 for a pair of work boots. I can tell you that. We can't afford it. I turned to walk out of the store, and there was a piece of paper stuck on the wall, and magic marker, it said $9.99. $9.99? They don't even sell socks in here for $9.99. What's that? I walked over there, And here they are, Kaufman, double leather, triple stitch, exactly the same boot exactly as the one that was $79.95, $9.99. So what would you think? Well, there's something wrong with these things. Like they didn't put the steel shank in them. They must have the glue done right. Something's wrong. These are a knockoff from some other country. I don't know. There's something wrong with these things. I asked the lady, what's wrong with them? She says, there's nothing wrong with them. She says, the only trouble is they're 7.5. We can't sell them to workmen. I gave her $20. She gives me change and a brand new pair of Kaufman double leather triple stitch work boots. I'm walking towards my wife and I got a smile on my face that looks like it's going to break, and she's already worried to death about me. I can't eat, I can't sleep, I'm a wreck. And now I'm smiling like a Cheshire cat. What's wrong with you now? She says, you know what it was? One thing. There's only one being in the universe that knew that I put work boots on my prayer list. And he just told me he loved me. Wow. Did I need that? That's all I needed to hear. I love you. You know, he told me. There it is. The lady didn't know I put that in my prayer list. My wife didn't know I put it on my prayer list. Nobody knew it. Only God knew it. And he says, you're my son, and I love you. Thank you. Every time I put those well, believe it or not, I emptied the whole shelf, by the way. I told everybody in our valley, we had a number of guys, kids and guys that bought the rest of the boots for $9.99. They couldn't turn it down. When they see me walking around, where did you get those? They knew I couldn't afford them. What are you walking around them? $9.99. Sold the whole thing. This is called trust in divine power. I tell people, sometimes we lose that connection, Oh, we hear all kinds of Revelation stories and Daniel stories and stories about this and stories about that and stories about the other, but we need our own story. You know what I mean? We need our own story. And if you want a story, write out a prayer list and pray it faithfully. Just pray it faithfully. You watch what God does. It's just amazing what he does. Silver Hills Guest House is there today because of those work boots. That's the only reason. It was answers to prayer, every bit of it. There was nothing else to it. What I needed to learn is that God could do anything. Just keep asking him. Anyway, let's have a word of prayer. We'll quit here. Father in heaven, as we bow before you here this evening, Lord, we want to thank you for your love. It really amazes us that you made us in your image and that you are willing to give your only son for it. We don't even know what we're worth. We absolutely don't understand it. But for some reason, you love us enough to give your only son for us. And we know that really means a lot. Pray that you'll be with each person here, Lord, every person that's here. Every problem that they're facing, every difficulty they're facing, the ones that seem impossible. Just pray that you'll be there and show them that you love them. That's our desire in Jesus' name. Amen.